Now, allow me to introduce our guest feature speaker. Mary Emma Karam is a great friend. They gave me a little script here to tell you about her, but I didn't bring my glasses up, so you can look at the program and read all about the official stuff. And probably this might be better. I learned very quickly in meeting Mary Emma what a great resource and talent and wise friend she is. She challenged me and challenges us to think better, think more deeply, and to really be better in how we're doing it and making sure that, yes, we're protected along the way. I'm really blessed and thankful to be able to introduce my friend Mary Emma Karam to you.
Sometimes it's a challenge to be a lawyer with an eager client. So I want to share with you one of my favorite lawyer stories. There was an older, experienced counselor who had an innovative client. We'll just call him Woody. Woody had a heart of gold. He was always dreaming big. He wanted to do meaningful projects, and he wanted to do them now. He was undeterred when his lawyer explained all the possible liabilities associated with each idea. Woody wanted to move forward with creative ways to help the homeless, the elderly, the refugee, the orphaned, the imprisoned, the hungry, and the impoverished. He was driven by a simple mantra, best expressed by President John F. Kennedy, when he said that if a free society cannot help the many who are poor, they cannot save the few that are rich. So Woody expressed his desire to establish and manage a permanent home for more than 100 citizens. Of course, the lawyer asked if he had ever done anything like this before, but he had not. No one had. The lawyer continued, "Well, it's fraught with potential liabilities and unforeseen difficulties, legal and practical obstacles. It's a transient population, an unpredictable population, and you lack the experience in doing it. Why do you want to do this?" Woody simply answered, "Because no one else will do it." In spite of the lawyer's concerns, he did it anyway. Then he proposed acquiring a management of a second facility, a hotel, to be converted to homes for over 200 homeless people. The lawyer expressed the typical concerns, but he did it anyway. So after sheltering the homeless, he started a food truck to feed the hungry and to take food to the poor in places where they were, under bridges, in overpasses, on the street. The lawyer tried to explain, but he did it anyway. Now he has 4 food trucks, and they go to places others can't or will never go. Then the operation became one of the largest distributors of food for the poor in the region, giving over 6 million meals this past year. Woody then turned his attention to the increasing number of refugees in his area. His operation stepped up to provide essential services, interpreters, counselors. This time he cut through the red tape and again did the work that no one else would do. He did it his way. Of course, the Woody in our story is Dave Woodyard, Chairman and CEO of Catholic Charities, and his team. And I am the lawyer who witnessed it. I can also attest to the courageous and faithful support of Bishop Edward Burns for each of these projects. After weighing all the pros and cons, he would simply say, "We cannot let fear keep us from doing the work." When the bishop appeared at the Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center, the first thing he said to the refugees was, "Welcome to the United States of America." You could hear the jubilant roars and shouts through tears. It was the first welcoming voice many of them had heard since they started their long journey. How beautiful the hands that serve, the heart that lifts, the soul that touches so many lives in ways unknown and unknowable. Good afternoon, Bishop Burns, Dave Woodyard, ladies and gentlemen. I am humbled to be the witness of these many good deeds and to speak to these angels of charity on your 20th anniversary. As Dave mentioned and the bishop mentioned, I serve as the General Counsel of the Diocese of Dallas, and that means I advise many of the entities that make up the diocese. I'm often asked, how did you come upon this job? Well, the story goes, sometime after Kevin Farrell became Bishop of Dallas, he was looking for new counsel. So he formed a committee of lawyers, and that committee interviewed various lawyers. I was never interviewed. I was volunteering my services at different Catholic entities, and the bishop took notice. He said he never interviewed. I asked him why he never interviewed me. He said, because we already knew who you were. When he asked me to be the General Counsel of the diocese, I must say I was very hesitant. You see, I had always kept my spiritual life separate from my office life. But I had come to realize that there's really not a meaningful separation, that I'm a better, more valuable advisor by using all the virtues that form good judgment in both my work and my personal life. This has become especially helpful in my role as advisor to Bishop Farrell, now Cardinal, and now to Bishop Burns. I have other clients too. Most of them are public hospital systems. It's no accident that a vast majority of my clients are nonprofit entities whose charity mission I support. I see my role not just as a lawyer, but as a counselor, sort of like the old concept of the family solicitor who guided the course of the family business with good and wise judgment. I have this view because I was blessed to be born with great parents. My parents, Isabel and Lawrence Ackles, were great role models. As Bishop Burns mentioned, my father was advisor to many bishops, and his wisdom guides me in my role today. He and my mother, Isabel, were married for over 50 years. They had 10 children who together had 160 years of Catholic education. So my husband, Dr. Al Karam, is here today. We've been married 38 years, and our 6 children have had 97 years of Catholic education. 21 consecutive years at St. Monica School, 5 daughters at Ursuline for 19 years, a son who graduated from Jesuit, and they all went to Catholic colleges. My father practiced law for over 58 years at the family law firm of Ackles and Ackles with my sister, who's here, and his 4 sons, who now practice with their 4 sons, who are lawyers. We watched him serve in the law, and for him, it was all about serving others, his friends, his relatives, his clients, even strangers. He knew their names, their children's names. He was always present with anyone he met. He knew their business, their personal struggles. He was both a confidant and a friend. He would always take the time to talk to people and learn about them. I'm just going to tell you one story about him that sort of sums it up. One time my mother was in the hospital and had been there a couple of days, and a note came to the hospital delivered to her, but it was addressed to Mr. Ackles. My mother had 6 grown sons, so asked who was the letter for. It wasn't for them. My dad walked in and he said, "Oh, yes, thank you. That's from the man in the room next door, the hospital room." The note read, "Thank you for sitting with me and helping me through my problems. You changed my life." He changed my life. How many times did we hear that said of my father? From friends that we knew that we didn't even know knew our dad, from strangers, from so many men and people that he spoke to us about how my father saved them. My father was known for an unfailing sense of fairness and justice, and on his death, the Dallas Morning News quoted his best friend, Joe Hager Jr. He said, "Lawrence was always the judge. In my opinion, a judge is fair, even-handed, even to both sides. And that's why the title judge always stuck with him." So I was taught by him to be fair to everyone in all your dealings. Now, this isn't easy in my profession. I had a friend who's a lawyer who told me once that he had to check his integrity every day that he went to the office. I said, "My gosh, how do you work there?" I've practiced law at Jackson Walker Law Firm for 40 years. There's never been a single day I felt that way. I am grateful for the faithful, lasting support of my law firm, who, by the way, chose to locate their offices right there to be next door to the cathedral and named a conference room after the bishop's cathedral so he could see his cathedral when he visited our offices. And like me, they regard the church as one of their most valued clients, even though they have 400 lawyers in 6 cities. Long ago, one of my oldest clients told me, "Your mother taught you to be nice to people because that's the way you ought to be." I said, "Yes." He said, "That's not the way my mother raised me." He said, "My mother raised me to be nice to people because they might do something nice back for me." I've always remembered that, because both philosophies can produce successful business people. I chose to live my life by the first philosophy, much like the golden rule you were raised with. And it was Bishop Burns who started the Be Golden program to spread throughout this city the message of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's a message of unity, civility, empathy, so needed in our country today. The city is blessed to have his leadership, and I am honored to work with him. I have to tell you, there have been so many times I can't count when I have left a meeting with Bishop Burns in awe of his compassionate humanity, making others feel valued. That was also a common theme in my home. One of my brothers remarked that even though my mother had 10 children, she made each of us feel like an only child. She took time to listen to us, our wants, our dreams, our goals, but she was not too busy to see the needs of others around her and quietly do something about it. We learned by watching her deeds. One time, she saw the nuns at our grade school at St. Philip hanging their clothes out on the line. She bought them a dryer, even though her own dryer was broke and she could not afford to fix it. I remember her cooking hot meals and taking them out to men who were working outside our home on a cold day, or countless meals she prepared for a family who was having difficulties, and she fed the neighborhood with her homemade bread. She never cut corners when it came to supporting her family, although she did clip coupons. When her last of the 10 children started grade school, she went back to college and graduated with highest honors. Watching her raise her children empowered me with ways to raise mine. She was totally devoted to her family. She lived with an illness for 27 years, never telling anyone outside her immediate family that she had it. But she continued to supply an amazing strength and support to us all, even during times she was confined to her bedroom. What she lacked in physical strength, she made up in sheer determination and personal sacrifice, which we witnessed every day. And to her accomplished children, she was indeed the wind beneath our wings. From her, I learned tools to balance my home and work life. And like her, my proudest accomplishment is my family. 7 of her 10 children were lawyers, and as I graduated from SMU Law School, I looked and found a firm that would allow me to be the kind of lawyer I was raised to be. I started at Jackson Walker as a trial lawyer, was the first woman associate to make partner in the firm's 100-year history. But after trying cases in federal and state courts for 12 years and expecting my 4th child with a 4th difficult pregnancy, I decided I needed to look for a different field of law, something I could do from a desk in my home. And so I found a very small, quiet area of law that very few, in fact, almost no lawyers were in at the time: healthcare. I changed practice areas and spent 20 years working from home. I was one of the first remote workers because I knew if I failed at the job of raising my children properly, no other success would matter. My husband, Al Karam, moved his office also to be closer to home. And when he did, one of his former partners said to me, he must have another reason for moving. No one would leave such a lucrative practice just to be close to home. We always made it a point to be there for our children. One time Al was out of town, and one of our daughters had a grade school play. He flew back into town for the play and back out again. You would do that for an important business meeting with a client. Why not for the important meeting with your child? They too deserve to be treated like the important persons they are. It was from our parents that we learned the importance of sacrificing yourself for others. So I was asked to address the question today: how to utilize our talents to build the kingdom. As Catholic Charities demonstrates, the answer is really all about service. Serving others because you care about them. Reaching out into the community, treating every person as valued, giving back without asking for something in return. Or, as the prayer of St. Ignatius of Loyola goes, "Dearest Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wound, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labor and not to ask for reward, save that of knowing I am doing your will." Well, you can see that my parents believed in education. They started the Ackles Foundation, whose work has mostly supported the poor Catholic schools. And my sister Teresa started a nonprofit organization called the Victory Train in her hometown, Greene County, Georgia, one of the poorest counties in the country with the highest school dropout rate. The concept was to bring all of the private and public entities that serve the poor into one collaborative unit. Each charity was like a car on a train, and the train is linked and unified through the services to meet the needs of the whole family, not just part of their needs. The goal was to have all the county organizations join together to break the cycle of poverty in a single generation, and they are doing it. Well, here in Dallas, Catholic Charities is like the Victory Train, with all the cars filled with 33 programs in 10 areas. Let me read you what was published in the St. Monica Bulletin just this week. Catholic Charities helps individuals achieve stability and self-sufficiency through financial literacy, employment services, education, food programs, immigration services, refugee resettlement, disaster services, and permanent supportive housing. Or, to quote our former mayor, Mike Rawlings, "As the world is wrapped up in politics and pandemic, We too often forget the ones in our community that have nothing, no home, struggling with mental illness, and no place to turn. Catholic Charities has never forgotten the homeless population in Dallas and has been successful in housing and serving these important citizens. It knows how to stretch every dollar you give them to meet the needs of these, the least. Indeed, it serves 200,000 people in 9 counties every year. The effects of this work ripple throughout those communities. The other day, some women and I were talking about the challenges that you face. And one of them said, one of the hardest things is everyone's so busy trying to figure out when to say no and to keep your workload manageable. But I thought about that a moment and I said, that's not the challenge. The challenge is to know when to say yes. And like the lawyer in my story, often we all find ways to say no. Sometimes we're waiting until all the obstacles have been removed before we say yes. You know, we think we are seekers. We're seeking the opportunity to do God's work. But really, sometimes we find we're just waiters. Waiting for the perfect car before we get on the train as it passes us by. Today, when Dave Woodyard calls me, I say, yes, what can I do for you? He has me trained well. Because Catholic Charities is the whole train. It has all the cars, anything you might be waiting to do. Let's get on the train and support the mission, because together we're better, and the time to say yes is now. Thank you.